Hi there, Dave Levine here. Thanks for joining me for episode 5 of the Sports Stories podcast. Last week, we had Natalie Henderson as our special guest. Natalie gave some great insights into working in a football academy and also in the England women's football setup. Natalie also shared some of the key moments that helped her progress in her career. Today's guest will also share some of the key moments that helped progress his career. Our special guest is Colin Wilson. He's vastly experienced and has a great insight into the world of sport. Colin has been involved in sport as a player, a coach, an administrator and a consultant, and has experienced sport throughout his life through many different lenses. Colin started off as an England junior table tennis player and achieved over 100 caps. He's also been the founder of a business consultancy agency called Business Athlete. Colin continues to support organisations and individuals fulfil their potential, and there's nothing more than he'd like to do is to help our listeners today. So without saying too much more, I'd like to wish a very warm welcome to our special guest, Colin Wilson. Welcome to the Sports Stories podcast, Colin. It's really great to have you with us.
Thank you.
I was reflecting back, I think I've known you now and worked alongside you for over 20 years.
You're kidding. Do we go back that far?
We do go back that far. I've always really valued your insights, your inspiration, your support, your challenge. And I've also come to know you so well in terms of all of the highs and the lows and the direction that you've travelled through your career. It's always been a cause of curiosity for me, because you've done so many wonderful and weird things along the way. So I'm really delighted to have you with me today to share your story, your direction through your career. But can I kick us off by starting off with your very first memory, or where you recall being first involved with sport? Because, you know, those early years are a real interest for me, because I think they're the foundational part to who we are. So your first recall of sport, Colin.
Yeah, well, pleasure to be with you, Dave, and nice to be talking with you again after a short while. And we go back a long way, don't we? But first thoughts about sport. Well, the obvious thing to go for is that I started playing table tennis, which was my sport and is my sport still. You know, it's my kind of specialist sport when I was just 9. But if you go a little bit more general than that, my first recollection of something sporty was learning to ride a bike.
Right.
And the significance of it, I think, has stuck with me throughout, because my dad, caring, blunt Yorkshireman, Sheffielder, like all my family, and I got my big brother had a bike, and then it was time for me to learn to ride a bike. He decided so, and I was well up for this. So he got me on the little driveway, and then you just go down the driveway and you just kind of bear right into the road. So he waited till there's no cars coming. We're on a very quiet estate, and I sat on this bike. He says, "You ready?" I went, yes. And then without realizing it, he just pushed me from behind, just gave me a massive push. And there I was, just going down the short drive. And then, of course, I've got a right-hand bend to do to get onto the road. And I tried to make this bend, and wobble, fell over, scraped my knee, bit of blood, really angry really hurt. Secondly, really angry at my dad for chucking me in the deep end. And I got tarmac in my leg. And so I went running back with this bike. I think I wouldn't have been 6, I'd been less than 6, wouldn't I? Maybe 3. And, but I remember it. And I was big and grown up like 6. So I went back, and he goes, "Oh, sorry." He says, didn't realise. No. He says, "Come here." So he got the bike, and he got me, and he got me standing there and started talking me through how the bike works. And he says, "So what you do?" He says, "Right, okay, so sit on it like that." So I sat on it like that, naively. And he went, right. And he went, push. And he just pushed me again. And I went flying down the driveway, just about managed to stabilize it because it accelerated from his push. Got my little legs going. And I came up to the corner. I was terrified of this corner because I just failed on it a minute ago and hurt myself. And still got a little bit of blood running down my leg, little graze. And I just made it round the corner without hitting the curb. And then went up the road, and I just thought, crikey, how am I going to turn around and come back? And there's a kind of a little L shape where there was another road. Again, he checked the time, it was really quiet. And I managed to get around this L. So I knew how to do a U-E. Right. And I did a U-turn and came back, and I went flying past my dad on the road. He was stood in the driveway, and I looked across and I grinned. I go, "Look, I've shown you. And of course, he was showing he was showing me more than I was showing him. And that's my first recollection of getting involved in sport. And then you couldn't get me off my bike. I was up and going through the woods and down to the shops and out onto the estate and up to the main road, but not on it. And that was all fantastic. And then when I was 9, that's when I got into sport in a specialist way with my table tennis. So my dad, big influence on me, and that's a typical example of what he was like.
Yeah, and threw you in at the deep end, eh?
Not for the first time, yeah. And how stupid was I second time around to trust him? But he was more right than I was.
Brilliant. And clearly an impact on your life, that early stage, and how you were introduced to sport and activity.
Yeah, that was the treatment. That was the expectation. You get on with it. You pick yourself up. You go again. Things are not necessarily going to kill you that you're scared of. And I got my big brother to keep me in my place as well, so I could aim for him aspirationally, and he could knock me back, and then I'd have to get over things and go again. So yeah, all the resilience stuff I think was stuck in there at an early age. And I think in some ways, someone says, resilience, someone's good with resilience. There are 1,000 aspects and splinters to resilience, and I don't think anyone's got all the splinters right. I think there are ways in which we're resilient and other ways in which we've got our own Room 101s, and I've probably still got mine. And in other ways, people would say I'm very resilient. So we're all a huge mix, but that certainly showed me some ways to live and survive and progress and overcome. I've always, part of my interest in disability sport has always been around the principle of overcoming and what can be overcome. And I've always been impressed, emotionally very impressed by people who overcome adversity. Brilliant.
And Colin, you've given us a real solid introduction to yourself, and I'm always keen for our listeners to get to know my guest. Can you expand from there and tell me a little bit more about then how you progressed through your career through to today?
Okay. It's quite a while now. I'm getting old, but table tennis player through and through. So I went to school, did the homework that I had to do, but I'll be down the table tennis club nearly every night for the next 15 years. Different clubs if I've moved or moved house or whatever, but basically, get down the club, get some practice in. I remember Dad saying, "What do you want to do on your birthday?" And I said, "Let's get down the club. I want Steve to practice with me, and I'll improve my backhand, whatever." Christmas Day, what should we do? So all the presents and everything, fantastic. Gets to about 2:00 in the afternoon. Any chance we can go down the club? And so Dad would end up being a key holder, and he'd take us to a little rundown little shack where we could have a game, and I could keep playing. So just really, really keen. Managed to play and get picked for England juniors by the time I was 12 or 13. I was England number 1 or 2 from the age of 11. And really grateful for the parental support to cart me all around the country every weekend. So I played in 5 European Youth Championships, 5 consecutive years, won a European bronze medal. About the same time, I got picked for the seniors and played in the Commonwealth Championships, won 2 Commonwealth Silver medals, but didn't actually make it as a successful senior international because it's tough. There's only 3 spots. Right. And I was just about top 10, and I was picked on potential, and I managed to get a couple of silvers, but that wasn't enough to be a superstar. And I went to university, which didn't harm me at all, table tennis wise. I studied economics and statistics, and then got offered the job. As you do, you're doing the milk round, or the recruiters come around. I got offered a job as a trainee chartered accountant, and then realised that I really wanted to continue my table tennis at age 20, 21, and went to Sweden and trained out there. Played British League with Matthew Syed, Desmond Douglas. Played in teams with them and won Senior British League with them. Wonderful journey. Learned so much in Sweden. It was unbelievable. And then retired when I was sort of 24, 25, few injuries, and also realising I wasn't going to earn much money or play for England regularly. So then I got into sort of teaching, coaching and consulting, and that's kind of got into more versions of that. Worked for the governing body for many years, been on the board of the governing body and a generation beyond that. and then got into learning and development and coaching more, coach development around business as well as in sport. So it was a fairly easy jump for me to be used as a coach and consultant in business, using what I felt I'd learned around systems and leadership and dynamics. So I've always been interested in that side of things.
Wow. You continue to blow me away, actually, with the variety of experiences that you've had. And I want to throw it back to you in a sense of through all of these experiences, and you've mentioned the word sort of resilience and really sticking at things and picking up opportunities. Are there any particular phrases or quotes that have underpinned your journey through all of these lovely experiences that you've had that really helped you?
Well, as you know, my little brand with Rosie and a few others and yourself is business athlete, and the strap line to business athlete is winning without losing. And since we coined that in 2004, I believe, that stuck with me the whole time. It means more than one thing. Winning without losing doesn't just mean winning at everything and never losing. That's not what it's about. It's about, in a very basic way, it's about not looking for a win with such focus in one narrow area of life that you're losing out in other areas of life. So yes, let's be focused. Let's have that lifestyle immersion. Let's have that obsession that high performance sport can get us into, but let's not lose sight of who we are. Let's not lose sight of what life is all about. And let's, if we're working with people in business, let's make sure that they are not winning in business and losing in life. And that's one of the mantras that I've tried to do, and picking up from, unashamedly from Jim Loehr, who was sports psychologist at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Centre and wrote with others and created the corporate athlete in the States. And Stephen Covey, of course, one of my heroes in terms of leadership guru. Yeah. And I know him, and I know about his sort of faith background and everything as well. And they came up with the concept of integrating physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and we use that so often, and it seems to be very, very useful for a lot of people. And right now, in the situation that we're in, talking now on online on video, I think the integration of those four areas is even more poignant and prescient than it's ever been.
Colin, can you give us a really strong example of when you've used that mantra and brought it to life in an area of success for you in your career? A real life story.
I think I learned a lot of the underpinnings of this many years ago. Yeah. Well before the new millennium, when I was a table tennis player, when I went to Sweden, okay. And their philosophy around learning. Yeah. And Yogi Breisner, who's Swedish and working in the UK sports system as an eventing coach, not just any old eventing coach, but, serious medal winning bloke. And we were talking about my experiences afterwards. We worked together, but he is Swedish and in the sports system. And he said, there's one way that I can explain it to British and other aggressive societies around performance and learning. He said, my son goes to school, and they say, when he goes back to school after doing his homework, they say, Breisner, and little Breisner stands up. Says, and in England, he said, okie doke, this was your homework. What were your answers to your homework? And he'd give the answers to the homework, and they'd be right or wrong, and then they'd put on the blackboard some of the corrections and things, and that would be some teaching, and that would be all fine, and that was good. He says, in Sweden, he said, when I went to school, he said, Breisner, and so he'd stand up and said, Breisner, what did you learn from doing your homework last night, Breisner? Right. And there was just a little emphasis on learning and reflection. We talk about the Scandinavians being reflective type of people.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's largely true culturally. I've worked with at Nokia in leadership development there with the Nokia group, future leaders, and they do tend to be. I was on the phone on a group phone call with them, and I asked a question, and the group went quiet, and the person who was the recipient of the question just went quiet. And this is Finnish now rather than Swedish.
Yeah.
And after a couple of minutes, I'm thinking, okay, everything's gone a bit dead. Let's check the technology. Are you still there, Marty? And Marty came back and just went, thinking.
Right.
In other words, give me time to think.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on here. The work is being done in the mind.
Yeah.
And it was just very quiet on the phone. For everyone else, it's really normal. And I held off as long as I dared as a Westerner, British American style. But I just thought the line had gone dead. And so I thought I needed to check it out. I didn't. They were just thinking that was expected. And he came back with an answer. I can't remember what it was, but it was really thoughtful, really insightful, took the conversation a bit of a different direction. And people got results that no individual would have come up on their own. So I learned a lot from that kind of reflective style, but also the combination of real nurture and brutal accountability. And that combination, I thought that was a dilemma and opposites. And what I learned was that you can actually build those together and make it an and, not an or. And I don't see that commonly, but I do see it in some environments. And I'm always very, very impressed when I see that implemented successfully.
So Colin, you've piqued my interest there with the nurture and accountability, because I think for our listeners that would be a really interesting kind of comparison. Or how do we use that together? Or can you share an example or a story where that's really come to life as well? Because I just think it's such a powerful concept.
Yeah, and it's not fair to put people under the microscope too much. But if in my own family, as you know, I've got two boys.
Yeah.
They both play. One's a fantastic little coach, just coming out of his teens, and also a very good player, top 200 in the country. And the younger one is trying to play full time. Funnily enough, they're playing full time now in Sweden. Surprise, surprise. Only aged 19, and they're just making their way. But little Sam was always quite focused and quite single-minded.
Yeah.
More so than Adam, who was more kind of more spacey and more sharey. But the younger one was a bit like that. And I thought, okay, let's go with this. So in terms of accountability and nurture, I just thought, well, if he's going to be good, table tennis is a fairly early specialization sport. So you can't afford to let him get to 16 years old, messing around, having some fun, playing 2 or 3 sessions a week, etc. And at that point, he goes, Dad, I'd like to be fantastic at this sport. And I'll go, it's too late. So I realized he had some ability and he had some focus and he was enjoying himself. And so I thought, I've got to raise this at a young age. So he was 10 or 11. And I thought, how do I do this? And I just found Pete Charters, who is referenced widely now as Matthew Syed's coach. So you'll know Matthew Syed from writing in the Times and writing books, Rebel Ideas and Bounce and Black Box Thinking. And Matthew was an old training partner of mine, and actually he was in his corner coaching him occasionally, as he was the next generation down from me, and I was still involved in coaching national teams. And he always cites Pete, and Pete was his coach, and at a young age, and a defence coach. And Matthew was a defensive player, and Sam was turning into a defensive player. So I turned him over to Pete and I said, "Look, Pete, we can't keep this guy up to the table. He wants to go back. Let's make a good defensive player out of him." Yeah. We've since ditched the term defensive because putting backspin on the ball and being away from the table, there is nothing defensive about what Sam does. it's all for a purpose and it's all aggressive. Yeah. So when people call him a defender, I think, nah, it's not quite the right expression for it. Yeah. But when he was very, very young, and 11, he said, "Okay." I said, "Sam, do you want to give this a go?" And he was enjoying being with Pete. And it was great to see, Sam coming up as a second generation after Matthew, if you like, another sort of 20 years later on. And Pete was still enough beans in him, and such enthusiasm and such focus towards helping people to reach their potential as performers. And so I said to Sam, if you want to be good at this, I said, dude, how good do you want to be? And he said, I'd like to be very good. I said, okay, well, let's pretend then that you're going to play in the Olympics in Paris 2024. We didn't know it was Paris at the time. We didn't even know it was Tokyo in 2020. But I just said, whenever it is. I think we knew it was Rio. We knew it was Rio 2016 coming up. We had that venue, but the next one wasn't ready yet. So I said, look, imagine it's Rio again, and you're going to go to the Olympics. I said, how about then, if you want to be good, I'll show you what it takes to be good. So we need to have a proper program. We need to focus. And of course, I don't want to put a kid through this for the next 10 years if they not into it particularly. Yeah. I said, well, tell you what, let's do it for 2 weeks. 11-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, little bear. Yeah. And I said, should we do it for 2 weeks? And I'll show you how to develop as towards being a top player. He goes, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I pick him up from school myself, drive him across to Kingfisher, put him with Pete, play with him myself, go through the program, do the things. And he was responding to it well and working hard, and he realised that this was a thing, to actually train seriously. Yeah. And he was sweating away and enjoying himself. And I did that for 2 weeks with him. And I went, oh, okay, how was that? And he says, yeah, it's okay. I said, well, if you want to, we could do it for another 2 weeks. But it's completely up to you, totally up to you. But if you want to, we'll do it in a couple of weeks and then just see how it goes. And the term "we'll see how it goes" just happened every couple of weeks.
Every couple of weeks
throughout the next 3 or 4 years. Throughout the next couple of years.
So it evolved over time.
Yeah. But I just thought, how do I get him? How do I give him the opportunity without the pressure?
Right.
And that's how we got to this kind of nurture and accountability stuff. And I said, anytime you want to step off, that's absolutely fine with me. Not worried at all. But every 2 weeks he went, yeah, okay, I'll do it again. But I think the fact that he didn't have this long-term pressure and he was just doing it as a trial, just doing it for fun. It was emergent for him. That was great.
And the accountability was there maybe for the 2 weeks. So it was short bursts with a get out if needs be. So we could continue to review along the way.
Yeah, so we weren't trying to get to the Olympics in 2024. Yeah, we were trying to have a play at experiencing what it's like to be preparing for something, just for a fortnight. Yeah, and then we repeated it and we repeated it and repeated it because he wanted to. Yeah. And then after a while he got on a track. He then got sick actually for 3.5 years. Didn't have any social, any education, or any exercise for 3.5 years, which was heartbreaking. You feel helpless as a dad when he's got chronic pain and other issues. So that was horrible. But eventually he got over it. We didn't know if he ever would, and he was just hurting and he wasn't able to do much at all. But when it faded away and he came back to it, he took to it again. And then by then, of course, he'd had a good education in what to do to pick it up and to renew the interest.
Wow. So you continue to keep his interest and his enthusiasm and his passion for the sport, so before he became ill, he was enjoying it. And then afterwards he could pick it up again because he hadn't been drilled or taken to a place where he didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. And to be, in terms of the adult having an influence and being influential, and having their own thoughts. Yeah, he was he predisposed? Yes. Was he potentiated for this? Absolutely. But it was done in a consensual way with a very young mind and body that you want to nurture and care for. Yeah.
So, Colin, if I move us on to the kind of the flip side of the coin in terms of your lovely mantra about winning without losing, it's been a time in your career or in your life that you can take us to whereby it was a pretty challenging time and a low patch, and where that mantra actually really helped you come through it and out the other side of it, and if so, how?
Well, I didn't really learn it until I learned part of it when I was away in Sweden. I wasn't away in Sweden much, only a matter of weeks for a couple of years, but it had a big impression. I don't think I've lived out there for a year at a time or anything like that. I didn't. Yeah. But it was an amazing time in my sport because they were gearing up to win the world, to beat China for the World Men's Team Championships, which they ended up succeeding in doing, which was just a revelation to many. But we'd kind of seen all the preparation. Yeah, so I think the winning without losing didn't come till later. I was already in my 30s, 40s when that really kind of hit home for me. And I was doing a lot of coach development, leadership development, coaching system development with a range of people. But a tough time where I think I needed it was, as you know, and I've still got you're looking at me on the video screen. I've got my Corby Smash table tennis shirt.
Yeah, on. I've noticed that. It's great.
and we're doing well, and it's a part-time club for me. And I threw lots of stuff into it, lots of money into it, lots of time, emotion, energy into it, and alongside others as well. And it's still going, which is great. But it took chunks out of me to get it going. Emotionally and physically and financially. And I'm very proud of what we've achieved. And we're ticking over. But there were times in building that. So this is more of a kind of business story, really. It was always going to be a non-profit, but we were hoping that we were going to get paid for the effort we put into it, but not distribute sort of profitable dividends outside of the organisation to directors, kind of thing. Yeah. So kind of a semi-commercial non-profit. Yeah. And it was taking chunks out of me, and we weren't getting the people through the door, especially in the daytimes, that we were hoping for. Yeah. So having put a massive effort into it, we had a big marketing effort, but also, marketing, issues, and the finances were going down. I'm just chucking more in, and it's hurting, really hurting. I'm not getting the time to do my other work, and it's kind of clouding everything and taking over. Yeah. Even though what was happening there was great, it just wasn't growing fast enough to add up. But then I got my kids as well that were, I didn't do it for the kids at all. At the time that I set up Corby Smash, neither of the kids were playing or interested. Yeah. Sam was ill. It was the last thing from his mind that he'd ever play again. And Adam was just a recreational player, just liked a little hit every now and again. That was all. But they both gravitated back after I opened it, and after it was getting difficult financially. So that was another reason why I thought, I've just got to keep this thing going. Right. And I've got to get it to a place where we can make it survive into the long term. And as I say, now it's a spare time activity for me. We've got the community, it is running, and the kids have had a very, very important and formative 2 or 3 years with the facility there, which we've now moved to a smaller place. But it was very, very difficult. And I've said to people a few times, if I hadn't known my business athlete principles, and if I hadn't been able to integrate those 4 energy capacities, I would have either had to pack it up early and just go, I can't do this, it's going to fail, or I would have been dead in a ditch somewhere just from burnout. So I think I've avoided, I'm a pretty active type, as you know, and I think I've avoided burnout quite a few times. And I've seen executives struggle, and I run pre-burnout workshops for people that are heading in that direction. And I really, really understand that coming over burnout is difficult, because there's a traumatic effect that's happened in your brain. Yeah. By the time you've got proper burnout, that is always going to leave scars, and is very, very, very difficult to overcome fully for quite a significant period later. But I knew what I knew, and I knew how far I could push myself, if you like, with the pressures of what was going on. And it was like, can I pay the mortgage? It was, am I looking after the missus okay? Are the kids healthy? Are my couple of employees all right? And big issues around. One of the things I find hard are serious financial pressures, and I think I've had them at least twice in my life. I've had periods, and it's not comfortable for me. I don't want to. Some people don't care if they lose money or if they go bust or whatever. And while I recognise that there's families in Africa that have got bigger things to worry about, as my dad would say. You've got people worse off than you. I don't want to let people down in that way, and I don't want to lose everything if I don't have to. And there were some dark days, and eventually, of course, you come around. But at the time, you don't know you're going to come around. Yeah. But I think it was the understanding of performance and balance together that enabled me to go, you know what, I think we can keep stepping forwards and get through this, through the dark times.
And Colin, what you really give to me here, though, is the sense of, you've talked about your business athlete principles, but it's not about knowing. It's actually, you've really applied them, and you've really had to bring them to life and kind of take some of your own medicine. So as a developer of others, you've really had to apply them to your own world. And I wonder, I'm always quite curious as to kind of the real deep feelings that those times evoked. What were your lasting feelings around that time?
Well, it gets to a point where you just get to, your mantra is survival. But I think, as Viktor Frankl would say, you choose your values at a time like that. I'm not saying that my situation or conditions were as serious as many others have. We're talking about a ping pong club, But for me, it was tough. I was in danger of losing a lot. More than everything that I had and all that jazz. But I wanted to keep it going. I still had the aspiration, and there were some fantastic people around me. So I think really for me, it was just a case of knowing what value, knowing who I was going to be each day, and living that. And the people close to me would have seen some ragged edges at times. They would have seen me struggling. They would have seen me upset. They would have. There's times when I wasn't able to pay the wages on time. That was embarrassing for me. Those sorts of things I found difficult.
How did you work out who you wanted to be? Because you gave me there a clue. Is that was one of the things that really helped pull you through this?
Well, I had to be. There was a lot to do, and had a great team. Around me as well, deserving people around me, but ultimately I was responsible. So I think I decided very clearly what my values were, and we did a values exercise on the club.
Brilliant.
And I've been in corporates and we've done values exercises and workshop facilitation, and we've got to get it down to 5 values from this list of 36 that everyone in the room thinks is important. We've all kind of been there, done that. And are we really going to live them anyway? And all the usual corporate stuff around that. But when we came to the club, we decided, and it ultimately, I decided with help, that we only had one value. I thought this is quite different to what I preach in terms of getting to a small number of tight values. We had one value, thinking about what we were doing with the community and everything, and kids come off the streets and what have you, and it was respect. And there was a kind of an 1A, 1B, and 1C. So the value was respect, and 1A was respect for self. Number 2 was respect for others, for all others, respect for all others. And number 3 was respect for the environment, whether that's not smashing a ball around because you're frustrated or bashing the net or whatever, shaking hands with the umpire at the end of a game, all of those sorts of things. So respect was the only, and I just thought, right, what's the next value? And the one after that. And I just went, hang on a minute, that's it. We're there. So I just decided that I was going to respect myself no matter what happened, that I was going to respect all others no matter what happened. And there'll be people who will watch this and go, well, Cole, you're a bit flipping ragged with me at some points. And that would have been the pressure of the task and the pressure of the role at times. And I'll put my hand up to that. But I think underneath, I've managed to remain a decent human being. And third one, respect for the environment. So to try really hard to hold on to this venue for as long as I could, until I realised that we needed to move somewhere that was easier to manage. And to try and keep the venue iconic. So I'd continue to invest in the flooring being the best in the country, the lighting being the best in the country. So you could run a world championship or Olympic championship final there. So anybody could understand what decent quality experience was. And we'd have Adam working as a host and Henry and Tony coaching, and fantastic stuff. Well done them. And so I was hanging on to that. I was hanging on to that.
And you paint a lovely picture for me in terms of that three-legged stool again, in terms of balancing off the self, the other, and the environment, and keeping a nice balance between them all. Because I guess you had to look after yourself here, as well as look after the people and the club, as well as also making sure the environment was as professional and as quality as you would like. And I can see there's a nice, healthy balance. And I sense that that's what pulled you through by keeping that check in place. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, one of the things I learned from Robin Shohei in facilitation is a wonderful coaching supervisor. He's written widely with some of the leading leadership thinkers. And I always remember in one of the supervision sessions, he says, when you walk in as a workshop facilitator in a serious corporate environment, he says, you don't have the luxury of being self-conscious. Yeah. You don't have the luxury of going in with doubt. And I just thought, this sounds like boxing to me. If you're a boxer, you don't have the luxury of going, I think my chance is 60-40. You've got to commit your brain to it. Yeah. And you don't have the luxury of doing that. And I think it's been a really helpful mental tip for me to work with the kids. Yeah. Some of the young players that we've got, getting nervous in a game. And every now and again, I've used it and it's worked. I've just said to them, come on, how you feeling? Oh, yeah, a bit nervous. Yeah, okay. Right. Well, if you're going to be nervous, I think I can hear my dad in myself, but a bit of Robin as well. I say, well, if you're going to be nervous, you're going to lose, aren't you? So don't bother with that. Just don't bother with it. Just go and play. And they kind of go, some of them go, oh, all right then. And that's it. And they go and they decide not to be nervous. And that's bit of their brain switched off. And off they go and they perform. And I think, people in our kind of roles have to do that at some points. We know some of the things that world-class athletes have said on the day before a major competition, what they've said the night before about their doubts, and they didn't deserve to be there and they haven't done the training properly and they're not worthy to be around all these other athletes that they're going to compete against. And sure enough, they go and win the gold medal for Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So everyone has these doubts, but in the moment you need to transcend that, and then you can gain a reputation with yourself that you can go into a situation, you can perform to somewhere near your potential, even though the conditions are not always going your way.
Wow. So, Colin, I would like to move us on here, and you've opened the door for me in terms of the role that your father's played somewhat, because you've mentioned him a couple of times, and you may wish to sort of identify a person or even a situation, but I'm wondering if there's been an inspirational moment in your career or your life where you can really think, wow, that was a massive turning point, and whether it's a person or a scenario or a situation that you could talk us through that's really made a big impact on you.
Okay. I think there's only one situation that I should raise above all else, because someone did make a massive impact, and it would be remiss not to mention them. And when I was coming out of the juniors and into the senior game, I wasn't going to have any more junior tournaments. I'd won the bronze medal in the boys doubles in the European Youths in Poland before the Iron Curtain came down with my mate Graham. And I was coming out of the juniors, and I was a bit directionless and a little bit arrogant, and so it was not a great combination. And I didn't really know that. The self-awareness wasn't there. And I'd had a big hit because the powers that be at the time, the performance coaching system at the time, were all into, you've got to go full time. As soon as you finish your A-levels, you've got to go full time. And I looked at university and I went, hang on a minute, you get 22 weeks off at university. And when you're there for the 30 weeks that you are there, you've only got lectures for 14 hours a week. And that goes down to 11 in the second year. So hang on a minute, you're telling me that going and getting a decent degree at University College London, which is right next door to where I can practice at St Bride's. All the best players come from around London, commute in and practice all day table tennis next to all the bankers. That I can't do this. So they said to me, have you made a decision, Colin? And I said, yeah, I made a decision. I said, I'm going to go to UCL and do economics and statistics. And at that point, I'd been on all of the England junior camps. I'd by that stage been invited as a junior to all of the senior camps. I was playing with Desmond Douglas and all the other team members, Carl Preen, and I was doing well, and I was down as potential, and I was doing well. The moment that I said in this culture that I was going to go to university, I never got picked for an England training camp again in my life.
Right.
And at 17, that's quite a hit. And at the time that you're coming out of the junior events, which at that time was under 17, into the men's game only. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge, huge reset and a huge new hill to climb. So that hit me hard. But I went to university, and I did train well and hard with Skylar Andrew and Kenny Jackson, Graham Sandley, Philip Bradbury, Max Crimmins. All your table tennis players will remember these wonderful, wonderful players, and dozens of others as well. And I just did everything I could to put the both together. And to be honest, the only commitment I made to myself and to my parents was, I'll turn up to the lectures. I'll do the 14 hours. I'm not going to promise how much work I'm going to do when I'm supposed to be doing the other rest of the 40, because I'm going to be skipping down and playing table tennis.
Right.
And so that's what I did, and that was my commitment. And I got myself a 2-2. I'd like to do. I think I've got a few. I've got a few qualifications and accreditations and everything since, as you know.
Yeah.
But there's always a bit of me that says, go back. Come on, get a distinction at something and get a master's with a distinction, because you could have done better than a 2-2. Yeah. Just that I was too busy hitting little ping pong balls over 6-inch nets while I was there for 3 years.
Yeah. And who was the inspirational person then in that environment?
Yeah. Okay.
That's clearly played a big part of you, and it shows me a big sense of who you are there, actually, in terms of your determination to plot your own course, actually.
Yeah. But okay. Well, the power behind that was Peter Hurst,
right? And
Peter's fairly well known around sport. I think he was chief exec of the New Zealand equivalent of Sports Coach UK, or as UK Coaching now. Yeah. Many, many years ago, table tennis player and coach himself. He was about as good as I was. Played for England occasionally, and he got hold of me and he says, "Colin, you're coming out of the juniors," and he says, "You're going into the seniors." And he says, "What do you think your game's like looking ahead?" And I went, "Yeah, what are you getting at? A little bit defensive. But I'm doing okay. Just got to practice hard." And he went, "Well, your game is your game built to beat good juniors, and is your game built to beat good senior players?" And within about 5 seconds of reflection, I went, "You're right." And I hadn't really thought that through fully. I didn't have that long-term perspective properly. And I thought, my game's really designed to beat very, very, very good junior players. But the senior players, with the increased power that they're going to have, and I'm not big, and a lot of them were going to have more power than me. I realized my game wasn't set up for that. And he said, "You're going to need to make some changes, aren't you?" "Yeah, you're right." And I said he says, "Are you prepared?" He says, I'll help." I said, "Great, thanks a lot." And I just thought, here's someone, probably for the first time ever, that really, really understands me and my game and the game against, the environment I'm going to be in. And so I said to him, "Okay," I said, "how long is it going to take to go backwards, to go forwards? I know there's a restructure coming on here." Mm-hmm. So at 16, 17, I did a complete restructure of my game, technically.
Yeah.
Which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And I said to Pete, how long is it going to take to get back to where I am now, albeit on the other side I'll have a better trajectory of improvement potential? And he said, 3 years. And when I tell people that, they go, "Flipping, that sounds like a long time." But I thought, I looked at him and I went, "Okay, we're on." And I committed to it. And then people say to me, "Well, how long did it take?" And the answer is 2 years. So it actually took me 2 years to kind of get back to where I was. But then, of course, you're on a better trajectory. And I was definitely the right thing to do, definitely improved. And people say, "Well, you never went to any other Commonwealth championships or games, and you didn't get in the England men's team." Well, that's true. Yeah. But but it was a very, very strong time. You've got Desmond Douglas, Carl Preen and Alan Cook, all top 40 in the world. Des is in the top 5. And I couldn't get into that team. I beat 5 of the top 10, one of them twice in one season.
Right.
So I was there or thereabouts, but not quite good enough.
Yeah.
But had I stayed as I was and just gone for the incremental with a flawed foundation, I wouldn't have been as good. So I'm really happy Not that I became as good as I possibly could, that I actually reached my potential completely, but I got close enough to the top to be able to see the top,
right.
and then to go, okay, that last bit, how high is that going to be, and how long does it take to get there? And when I was 24 years old, I thought, you know what, I could put another 2 years into it, and I'll get a tiny bit better.
So,
but is that worth it? And at that point, I decided I was going to retire. I already had a shoulder dislocation, which didn't help, and I had a lower back injury that didn't help. And I decided at that point that I didn't need to do the extra 2 years to get to the top of the mountain, but I was close enough that I was happy.
So you raised there for me, though, the difficulty and the complexity and the challenge that this environment of trying to be a professional or a very successful table tennis player, or do I dare say any sports person, it is a really difficult environment to progress through. And, and to be successful at. And therefore, given your experiences both as an athlete and also a coach and also kind of a leader stroke administrator in these environments, what kind of advice might you give to somebody looking and listening to us thinking, I'm looking at this environment, I'm interested in going through this performance or talent pathway. What advice would you give to an aspiring athlete or a parent trying to support their children? As I know you're supporting your children through this as well.
Yeah, big one. And the answer is it depends on many, many things.
Well, what does it depend on?
What the individual or the parent? But I think it probably depends on what age this athlete is that you want me to speak to.
Okay.
Because if you said to me, here's a teenage athlete, what would you say to them and their parents?
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, if you're in a sport like table tennis or ice dance or gymnastics, and you're saying that your ambition is to be very, very good, I'll be saying, well, you need to start a few years ago. So enjoy the journey you're on, because you're probably too late to start. In other later specialization sports, then and you're speaking to someone who's younger, then you've got the opportunity of doing what I did with Sam. Yeah. But I think the way maybe to think of it is what I'd say to the parent. I think it's the parent that's got the responsibility for the vision more than it is for the child. You don't want to burden the child with too much vision at a young age.
Yeah.
But what I say to the parent is, let's get really clear about your time frame. Right. Are we talking about taking it as it comes and being emergent and seeing how it goes and trying to get from club level into the county team, into a regional squad? Yeah. If we're talking about a performance athlete, that's fine. But that approach is probably not going to take you to the top. Yeah. It may do. You may not have enough time and space, but it may not. And I accept that I'm coming from a fine motor skill sport, so it's typically more early specialization. So I'm clouded a bit by that. But generally speaking, I think it still holds. So what kind of conversation do you want to have with your child athlete when they're 18, 19? You don't want them to be saying, I wish you'd have pushed me harder when I was younger, because I would have liked to have been really good at this. And you missed the opportunity. You missed the boat. At the same time, you don't want to push a young kid that doesn't know, particularly what they want in terms of their aspirations, and be a pushy parent and destroy their enjoyment and destroy their career, because the parent wanted to keep that option open. So I think you need to be really clear about where you want to go. And 99% of the time, I think the right answer is, let's not get obsessed with ultimate performance. Let's enjoy sport and see how it goes and build it up. And we accept that we're very, very unlikely to be representing our country or making a living or what have you. And let's just have a great time. If you are, however, trying to keep that option open, then you've got to be brutally accountable to yourselves for that and to say, how am I going to organize this in a way that is not damaging to the child? And it's not trivial. It's a very, very fine line, and it's a very, very serious question. But done right, you can create a heck of a lot of joy throughout the whole family. But what is absolutely clear to me, that you shouldn't do it if you're doing it for the outcome. You must do it you can only go that route if the journey alone with no outcome is worth it, and it's in and of itself. Then it's justifiable. But you can't do it. You can't do it for the outcome and not for the journey.
Yeah, there's those lovely quotes in there, if we look after the process, the result will look after ourselves. And I think you're really playing to that in terms of we're working here with a young person's process, their journey through life. And actually, if we look after that well enough and support it and nurture it, yes, and hold them accountable at certain times, but also help them work out what it's about. I get a sense of what you're saying is that, the results will work out. They'll find the right place for themselves.
Right. And at the same time, if you take my situation with Sam, it's a little bit unique because I've played at a decent level and what have you. It's not every parent would have had that previous experience of being on a similar journey. Yeah. But at the same time, it was deliberate from my point of view.
What was deliberate?
The vision. The vision, the existence of the vision was deliberate from my point of view, because I needed to know what next steps to put in place to keep this possibility alive without it being a burden to the young athlete. Yeah. So the vision is deliberate, but we don't want to burden the child with that. So as they sometimes say in teaching is deliberate. Teaching is deliberate for the teacher, but learning is incidental for the learner. So they don't have to worry about that. But someone, and if you're saying, am I talking to a parent with an aspiring young athlete? Yeah, we need to get really clear on that. And then the second thing I'd say to the parent is, do you understand what it takes if you want to keep open the possibility of becoming truly excellent at this? Because most parents, to be honest, in my experience, most parents don't have the conscious competence to actually know what that journey needs to look like. It's not obvious, it's not intuitive, and you do need help from somebody that understands the pathway of sporting excellence to help you understand what is needed, and then that needs to be adhered to, but not in a way that gets in the child's way as an interference, to keep that pathway open.
Wow. So we offer some really great thought, some provocation even, some guidance there for parents.
Say that about me.
Well, and I think that's really useful because, there's a lot of people, and we're fortunate to have worked in this environment and understand it somewhat, but it's coming through from your conversation there, Colin, very strongly that it's a really fine balance, this, and there's so many different ingredients to consider. And, and your very first comment around actually it depends is really key here, depending on the sport, the child, the parent, the relationship. There's so many different ingredients. So I think you make a really valid point there. But actually, it's something to go into with your eyes open, maybe, and also not to take
very much
lightly from what you're saying and the experience that you've had.
Very, very much, yeah. And yet the delivery needs to be light.
Yeah.
We need to deliver this stuff lightly and elegantly and with fun and with a smile, and own that for ourselves. That's our journey too, but we just have an understanding of what's behind it too.
Yeah. Well, and with that point, and you've got a smile on your face there, I'm going to just ask us before we go into the kind of the quick fire round of questions. I'd just like to put to you about, who has been probably the most influential, inspirational person in your career? You mentioned your dad, you mentioned Peter Hurst as different people. Mm-hmm. Is there somebody else that you would say has had a huge impact, or are those the two key people?
Wow. Well, those two are the must-dos. If you're asking me about that, those, my dad and Peter. Peter Hurst and Dave Fairholm came as a team. Yeah. Okay. So Dave was a massive mentor, and I was speaking to him day before yesterday about mentoring issues, and he's still a guru to me. It was 1984 when we wrote the Pocket Guide to Table Tennis Tactics together. we go back a long way, and still now he's able to help me shift my brain in good direction. So he's another one. There are loads. There are too many to mention. If I start mentioning 3 or 4, people may not know them, and I don't want to miss out too many people. What I will say is my heroes tend to be not the usual suspects. Yeah. In the media, that they've got a media profile. Yeah. My greatest hero. Yeah. In terms of living their life as they should to others, is my cousin. My cousin, you wouldn't know in sport, doesn't play sport, has paranoid schizophrenia and very serious bipolar at the same time.
Wow.
And has had since they were a late teenager. So they've given up a lot. Yeah. And it brings a lump to my throat every time I think about this, about someone who just does what they need to do, adheres to what they need to adhere to, has appropriate expectations of life, and makes the most of it and creates a happy life. And Len, he's got married. Yeah, he's had 2 kids. They've grown up to be wonderful. His mum's still there. His dad died of motor neurone disease. He cared and tended for him. His mum is still alive in her 80s, and I spoke to her the other day, my Auntie Barbara. And it's the people like Len of this world, whether they're making, obvious large contributions or the smaller human contributions that make the fabric of society work. And he's valuable by being who he is, not by what he does, which he does the doing as well, within the sphere that he has, but he provides the value to all of us in being who he is and living life in the way that he does as an example, I think, to all, of making the best of what we've got and recognizing the limitations of what's in the environment. Brilliant. And just making the best of what's on offer. And so you can talk about Richard Branson or Nelson Mandela, but I'll go for Len anytime.
Yeah. Well, and on that positive note of somebody really being who they are, and being really true to themselves, I want to take us into our little quick fire round here, where I'm going to ask you a number of quick questions. And I
make me nervous now.
Well, it's pretty simple, because this is really a powerful part of the conversation for me, in terms of really helping and giving some guidance and advice to our listeners. So, Colin, I'm going to ask you, as I say, a number of questions. Your gut answers, your gut instincts will be great. So, what maximum 4 books would you recommend that have really helped, inspired and educated you along your way?
Leadership Team Coaching by Peter Hawkins and Nick Smith. Nick was a personal supervisor to me, and I've done a lot of work under Peter. So that's a classic in terms of leading and coaching teams. Going back to Winning Without Losing, Business Athlete Mantra, Emotional, Physical, Mental, Spiritual. I'd say The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Loehr and others. Is another classic. And then a chap who was after I finished playing table tennis, I went to help my mate, a table tennis player, Mark Mitchell, a senior international player that had a mechanics business, and I went to help him. I didn't know it was called management consultancy. I just went to help my mate to get rid of his overdraft in his little mechanics business. And he had a customer. He was in Hampstead. And he had some great customers, it's an unbelievable, London Northwest 3, some amazing people there. And one of his customers was called Arnold. And Arnold had a little faded red Golf CL, which we'd bring in for servicing. And he gave us a copy of his book, and he wrote a book, and it was called Winners and Other Losers in Peace and War. Right. And it was quite a thick book. It wasn't just a little article. And I read this book, and the guy's a genius. And he was just citing how, by trying to win and to win against things, we just create so many losses, which then rebound on ourselves. Right. So this was well before 2000, well before Winning Without Losing, but it was probably my first kind of introduction to the philosophy of winning without losing. So he called his book Winning Without Losing. So is that number 2?
That was 3. That's number 3.
No, number 3. Yeah, of course. Sorry. He called it Winners and Other Losers. Okay, brilliant. And then with a subtitle. In Peace and War. And then I've got to go with Glenn Doman's book, which I found at complete random, and found the title of the book unbelievably challenging. And I just thought, this is either evil or fantastic. And I picked it up and had a look at it, and I thought, this guy's really onto something. And his name's Glenn Doman. He's in his 90s now. And his book was called How to Multiply Your Baby's Intelligence.
Right.
And having and then having a child who was born with a brain injury, which we subsequently worked to fix, unashamedly so, and learnt a lot about practical neurological development in doing so with our eldest. And you would never know it to this day, but knowing the gravity of the situation we were in, having read that book and knowing what to do made a huge difference.
So technology, what technology really works for you would be your go-to place, whether it's a piece of software or a piece of technology?
Yeah. Okay, so two things that I find most impactful, and I'm going to surprise you here without going for anything. I'm not going to go for the singing and dancing.
Yeah, no, good.
Heavy tech. But there's some heavy tech that does big data and all of that is very useful. But in the end, my two, one has been Zoom, albeit with a few security issues. Yeah. But they're getting there. So Zoom on group video. Last night I was running because we're in lockdown at the moment. Yeah. And with this coronavirus, which whenever you listen to this, that'll be a thing for the early part of 2020, learning to live with what's going on here. So last night I was running a group table tennis session for my intermediates, and then subsequent an hour and a half later for my advanced group by Zoom. How do you play table tennis in a group with a group session with teenagers online and on video?
And how many did you have on?
I had 5 in each group.
Brilliant.
Yeah, odd number as well. But yeah, you get a bit of creativity, you can do that, and Zoom has been absolutely fantastic for that. And the other bit of technology that I think is most impactful that I use, even though I use some heavier tech, flip chart and pen.
Yep. Good.
Those are the two that make the biggest difference in my armory.
In your armory. Great stuff. Okay, next.
So I've gone low tech on you.
Low tech on it. Hey, low tech. I like that. Always breaking the rules again, Colin?
Well, that's a little bit of that.
So if you were to win the lottery, how would you spend your money?
So if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would, number one, use the first bit of the money and pay off any debt, including any mortgage on a house. So I'll get myself out of debt. Don't like... as I say, I'm not so good with finance. If one of the worries is going to get me, it's probably financial. And just a principle of not owing anyone anything, being independent, not being dependent, being independently robust. So I'd pay off any debts. Then the next thing I would do is put it away for 2 years. And then the next thing I would do is have a meeting with myself in 6 months' time to check that I'm still on the right plan. And at that point, I might have more idea of what's sensibly to do. But I think the worst thing you can do is tell people about it. And I think this, even if you're going to do good and wonderful things with it, I can't see what the benefit of telling other people about it would be. I think if I'm going to create some good out of this, then I need to really think this through properly without the noise of all of that fame and stuff. So that's what I do.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, I'm going to keep firing them at you. So sharpen these up then. I've got a question here. You mentioned the business athlete principles. What do you do to help you perform at your best in terms of your physical and emotional well-being?
Values. Connect with my own values. I would just remove myself from any... I'm quite extroverted. Remove myself from any extroversion. Just go somewhere quiet, meditationally. Remind myself who I am, irrespective of what's going on in the world. And then typically what I do, I'd think about who are the important people. Everyone in the room, the situation I'm going to go into. Yeah. In that situation I'm going to go into, everyone in the room, metaphorically or physically, is sacred. So I need to stand in the shoes of every individual that represents whatever stakeholders there are and look around from their position and imagine you make some mistakes, but imagine their needs, their motivations, what success looks like for them. So just get a feel in their shoes. Then I think what you do, you look at the relationships between them, and then the key themes that are likely to arise and likely to develop in the system. And then from that point, I think what you can do is to play a role in contributing to positive dynamics that moves things forward.
Great. Wow, powerful stuff. Okay, my next question is one of my favourites, so I'll see how you go with this one. Is what advice would you give to your teenage self?
Get some advice from someone 5 years earlier. back to my don't start too late philosophy. So if I was my teenage self, I'd say go and get this advice when you're 10. And I think there's something in my history about that. That's when I was 12, I didn't really understand about mental approaches and what have you, and physical, technical. I learned technical, and philosophical from Pete. I learned mental from listening to Brian Tracy tapes when I was in my early 20s. And then what I want to do is to help the 12-year-olds to know what it took me to I was 22 years of age to learn. And so my advice is get into the adult learning principles, that we talk about as early as you can. And just play with them. You haven't got to go with the long words or anything, but get into an interest in the way that the mind works, into neurology, psychology, etc., and learn how you operate at an early age, just in fun ways. Don't wait until you're in your 20s to do adult learning.
Brilliant.
Do it now.
Well, Colin, I'm drawing us to a close here now, and it's just been fascinating hearing your story, the highs and the lows, the aspects of your business, the career path you've gone on, but also hearing a lot of humble, personal, insightful stuff around your family and what you've done with your life, and also, really given some inspiration as to, the possibility going forward as well, which I often and always get from you. My last question would always be, whose sports story would you really like to hear?
Okay, I just want to help out where I can, but whose sports story? Give me just a second.
Yeah.
I'd like to know more. I'd like to have dinner with Roger Federer, because Roger Federer wasn't a finished article for quite some time. I'd like to know more about his story and what made him like he was when he was younger, and what changed him when he got older. And I know there are stories around that, but I'd like to actually hear that in person.
So in terms of something about not being the finished article and who is now the finished article and the journey.
And what happened? What happened to get on the path that to greatness, if you like. In terms of someone in, let's say, in British sport, I would love you to do one of these, or I would like to go out and have dinner with Dave Collins, sports psychologist, and someone who really, really knows their evidence base, really knows their stuff, is a mentor to hundreds and hundreds of sports scientists of many disciplines, and how they use what they know academically and how they apply it practically and how they apply it through others that they mentored. So Dave's a bit of a legend, and he's very generous with his time with others, and has been with me. And I talked to him not long ago, just after he was done something important with Chelsea, I think, or something, and football, and that was nice of him. But I'd like to get the opportunity to find out more.
I'll see what I can do, Colin. Let's see if we can get him onto a podcast to hear his story and his insights, because, not dissimilar to yourself, there is value and there is, gold dust or gems within everybody's story. And I really hope that the listeners from today's story, hearing your journey, who's been really honest and open and humble in what you've shared, I'm sure there'll be many nuggets which people can take away from what you've shared. So I'd just like to really thank you for that. I know.
My pleasure.
This is something that we've spoken about in the past. We both come from a place of being developers of others and helpers of other people, helping them to aspire to be the very best that they can be and fulfilling their potential. So I really hope what we've pulled together today in the conversation we've had will both inspire, but will also challenge and help people really think about what they do and how they do it. So I'd just like to end this off there, Colin, saying thank you. And just before we do close down, though, would you like to possibly give any sort of details of how people might be able to follow your journey in the future, should they should they be interested to make contact or see what you do?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn and just message me if you want to get in touch. You can email me, obviously, and if you just look me up on Facebook, you see some of my everyday stuff going on, and that would include me personally and the way that I communicate with friends, as well as my professional stuff. And of course, we've got Corby Smash Table Tennis, which has got its own Facebook page, and I often sort of regurgitate some of the things that are coming out of there. And happy to chat to people.
Well, I'd encourage people to make contact with you because, as I said, I've learned a lot from you throughout the years, and you've inspired me, and you've always made me really think. So, on that note, thanks, Colin. Really enjoy your time today.
My pleasure.
Look after yourself. Take care.
Hope it helps someone somewhere.
So there we have it, the sports story of Colin Wilson, his journey from riding his bike through to being an international table tennis player and now a high-performing coach, consultant and people developer. Colin is never shy of sharing his views and insights, which come with a powerful intent to help others develop and perform. Colin always makes me think. So, the conversation today made me really reflect on many things, including what information would I have liked to have known earlier in my life and career. So the questions I would like to pose to you to think about today are as follows. What do you believe to be true that may not be helping you? Also, who might you ask to help challenge those beliefs and assumptions that you have? It's been great having you with me on the podcast. I hope you have enjoyed it and it's made you think. Please follow us on social media if you're keen not to miss any of our great shows. From me, Dave Levine, look after yourself, and I look forward to having you with me on the next show.